Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. 9 years ago, Türkiye was pulled to the edge. What began as a sudden power grab by a shadowy network turned into one of the most defining moments in the country's modern history. A coup attempt that was met not by silence, but by resistance. From the streets of Istanbul to the heart of Ankara, ordinary citizens became defenders of democracy. Nili Kozad retraces the moments that shaped that fateful night.
A dark night in Türkiye. July 15th, 9 years ago, a nation stood on the brink. Tanks rolled into city centers. Gunfire echoed off buildings. An attempted coup was underway. For decades, Turkish citizens had seen scenes like this before. But this time, something changed. For the first time in modern Turkish history, civilians didn't just watch, they acted. In an extraordinary move that night, President Erdogan called on citizens, not from a podium, but over FaceTime, to resist. And the message went viral. Social media lit up with calls to take to the streets. A spontaneous nationwide resistance was taking shape. One image came to define the courage of that night.
I thought of a big move to jolt them out of this situation. Then I thought if people would see someone being crushed under the tank tracks live on television, they would pour out into the streets without thinking about anything else.
That night, 251 people were killed. Over 2,000 were wounded. And one location became the center of it all, the Bosphorus Bridge, which has since been renamed.
As we were moving toward the bridge, people were being shot. We carried many of the wounded. Motorcycle couriers were acting like ambulances. When we got within 200 meters of the traitors, a heavy volley of gunfire came down on us. During that shooting, I was hit twice, once in the head and once in the arm.
Ahmed was lucky to escape with his life. Many others were not.
Behind me is the July 15 Martyrs Bridge, where the failed 2016 coup was confronted head-on. That night, it became more than just a bridge. It became a symbol of resistance. Thousands stood here to defend democracy, and 9 years later, it's a powerful reminder of a nation that refused to surrender.
The failed coup was orchestrated by Fethullah Gulen, the leader of the FETO terrorist organization. Gulen had been living in the United States for decades, and Ankara repeatedly sought his extradition, a request that Washington consistently declined. Although Gulen died last year, the threat posed by the FETO terror group to Türkiye continues. In Istanbul's Üsküdar district, the focus has shifted from resistance to remembrance. The July 15 Association and Museum serves as both a record and a reminder.
People not only from Türkiye, but also from many parts of the world. Those who visit Türkiye and have something to say about democracy, those who have thoughts, love, and affection in their hearts, come to visit the museum if they want to learn something more about what happened that day or deepen their emotional connection.
That night, Türkiye didn't just witness history, it wrote it. With blood, with courage, and with the belief that democracy was worth dying for. Nili Kozad, Straight Talk.
For more, joining me now from Vienna is Klaus Woelfer. He's the former Austrian ambassador to Türkiye, where he served from 2012 to 2017. Ambassador, thanks for joining me. July 15th, a very important night that really impacted every aspect and facet of Türkiye's government, from the security forces to foreign policy to the judicial system. You were here in the country serving as the Austrian ambassador. Before we get to the questions, I want to ask you, what were your experiences from that night? What did you feel moment by moment as it was unfolding?
It was a big surprise. It came out of the blue when aeroplanes of the Turkish armed forces practically raised the soil above our heads. And our heads were in the Austrian embassy, which is only 200 meters away from the Turkish Grand National Assembly, the Parliament of Türkiye. it was already an early sign of what was to happen in the course of the night. At the beginning, it was just scaremongering, because the airplanes would use a supersonic bang to intimidate everybody. But then in the middle of the night, as the night wore on, they actually fired rockets on the parliament. Experienced that the following day after the coup had fortunately been overcome and overthrown. We visited parliament. Maybe I can explain you that second stage.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised when you saw swaths of people coming to the streets to defend the country? Was that a surprising development for you?
Well, it was not surprising in the sense that we followed developments all through the night. Thankfully, most media were working, so we saw President of the Republic coming to via Facebook, via opposition news station, talking to the people, and them heeding his advice. The minarets of the mosque, they had broadcast the message to go to the streets. So I was not really surprised. I was rather comforted by the fact that there was an actual strong and valuable resistance being brought against the tanks that were rolling in the streets.
Was there a breaking point throughout the night where you felt like, okay, this is going to be unsuccessful, the people are going to be able to push back, and Erdogan will remain in power, and this coup attempt will be defeated?
Well, yes, certainly it was the broadcast of President speaking to the population of the country that was already an indication that things were not going well for the coup people. I think this was actually the crucial thing, that they were kind of stalled, that there was not much progress. The television said they had somehow neglected the force of media and social media. Is played by a playbook, I believe, that was from a former century, from the 20th century, where you simply take control of the state television and some crucial points, eliminate the leadership and take over. But the putschists, they didn't succeed in any of these major tasks.
In the following days and weeks after the failed coup attempt, when you were talking with your counterparts from other countries that are serving in Ankara, did you feel like they truly grasped what was happening? They understood what the developments were, the gravity of the situation, how unprecedented the response was? Or was there still a lot of confusion?
Basically, by and large, everybody grasped what had happened and what was happening. Having said that, and you mentioned it, there was a certain element of confusion. There were some news outlets in the world that said, well, was this really a coup? Maybe this was staged, but how can you stage a thing where 250 people lose their lives? I mean, it's obviously not. But there were these elements of doubt that were sown through negligence, through bad intention, or by ignorance. However, I think by and large, people and colleagues realized what had happened and started, and still in the process of trying to grasp the nature of the coup plotters and the intention and also the quality of this network.
When you saw the foreign reactions coming from the EU member states, the EU as Brussels and the United States, did you feel these responses or shows of support were adequate?
Well, yes, in the end, they were adequate. They were not quite as quickly as some other governments who reacted. The Brits is always very, very quickly. But to the merit of our European Union leadership, one has to acknowledge that I think it was Foreign Secretary, Foreign Commissioner Mogherini. She was on a visit in Indonesia. So there was this time difference to get organized, kind of technically to get organized. And we finally had our declaration by the European Union out in Saturday morning after everything had happened. We were not the first, alas, but And of course, it would have been nice, that was my dream, my secret little dream, that some leaders of the European Union would directly fly to Ankara to show support. But it all happened very, very quickly. And in fact, we were in close contact through our the president of the EU ambassadors in Ankara. It was the Slovak presidency, and Ambassador Anna Turenichova, she was in close contact with Ömer Çelik, the European Union Affairs ministers, and they both agreed, and we were invited, EU ambassadors, and only the EU ambassadors, to participate in the solemn session of the Parliament, of the Grand National Assembly, which took place already Saturday, 2 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon. We walked through the rubble and the broken glasses caused by the rockets that had touched the Parliament building. And it was a really moving moment. And we, the European Union, were there to show our solidarity. The Slovak ambassador brought flowers. I made a high five with Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, the foreign minister. And it was a very moving scene also to see all members of parliament standing up, jointly singing the national anthem, and in a way pledging allegiance to the principle of democracy, of parliamentary representation, statehood.
When you look at EU-Turkey relations in the post-coup attempt period, how did that event impact the bilateral relationship?
There was, of course, the signal of solidarity. So in a way, probably it improved, because it became clear that for the really important thing, that is the maintenance of a democratic order, that was a decisive moment, and Europe, as a beacon of the democratic principle, stood by Turkey. So in a way, looking back, I think it was rather, after all, rather positive.
Ambassador Woelfer, thank you for sharing your experiences and comments on one of the most important nights in Turkish modern history. To further break down the impact of that night, joining me from Rome is Valeria Giannotta. She's the scientific director of Turkey Observatory at the Center for International Political Studies. And from Ankara, Ahmet Keser. He's a professor at Hasan Kalyoncu University. Thanks for joining me, both of you. Now, it's been 9 years and we're still talking about July 15th, obviously a very important night in Turkey's modern history. Valeria, when you look back at these 9 years, what policy or what reform has had the most profound impact on Turkey today?
Yes, thank you, Yusuf. Actually, 15th of July is a very important and a crucial day for Turkey's recent history, as you mentioned. After that, many policies and many changes have been occurring within the country, in the region, and also at global and international level. And Turkey has implemented many reforms, either domestically, at the regional and international level. But I would like to spend some words related to the Turkey's regional and international stances, which has been dramatically changed, importantly changed after that time. Because it was a crucial time when Turkey and Turkish people realized that the enemy was inside the country, but also he was supported by some allies, international allies as well. And a sort of awareness arose in terms of security, for securizing Turkish territory, but also Turkish political stance abroad. So I do believe that 15th of July, in terms of security and securization, has been crucial. Of course, many policies have been implemented domestically in order to contrast the terrorism, in order to contrast any sort of terrorism, but specifically FETO organization, which is a terrorist organization. But besides, also Turkey has invested a lot in its self-sufficiency in terms of security, in terms also as a security provider for the region. a sort of frustration as well has been increasing, unfortunately, from the Turkish point of view towards some international allies that have been sheltered, some FETO members, the terrorist organization members, and to some countries and states which are not even recognized Fethullah Gulen as a terrorist organization. Therefore, I will consider the regional and international sense of Turkey as the most crucial change after the 15th of July 2016.
Ahmet, when you look at the FETO terror organization, do you feel that it's still a danger to Turkey today, or has Turkey decapitated the terror group and it's just a marginal group now, especially with the death of its so-called leader, Fethullah Gulen?
Thank you very much, Yusuf. Of course, when we are evaluating the FETO terror organization, we have to look at, as Valeria already mentioned, the domestic issues and international issues, and which are interconnected as well. So regarding the neutralization, yes, a lot of has been done in cleansing especially the army, the police department, the legal department, and most of the structures within the State Department are cleaned in that manner. So the so-called parallel state structure, which they leaked for years into the state system to control all the education, intel agencies, enforcement, and that most of them are cleaned. But still, the State Department is very careful and should be careful about those sleeping cells which might leak into the government and still successful in hiding themselves as well. So that's why from time to time it's possible to see that new arrestments come from after interrogations of the arrested organization members. So we will be still seeing these kind of issues as well in the future, because this is a very huge organization at the international level, which has a huge financial resources as well. So that's why we cannot say it is fully neutralized yet.
Valeria, it seems that one of the most complex issues regarding tackling this terror group is its presence outside. How should Turkey go about that? I mean, it's been 9 years. Obviously, they still have a big charter school network throughout Europe, in the United States, throughout Southeast Asia. Many members still enjoy their freedoms, have very prosperous business relations. How can Turkey go about decapitating the group's foreign presence?
Well, definitely diplomacy is one of the most effective tools. I mean, and when I speak about diplomacy, I mentioned the traditional way of diplomacy, but also in terms of public diplomacy. I mean, in Turkey, since 15th of July 2016, also recorded a change in terms of public diplomacy in a way that is just widespreading the right knowledge about FETO organization abroad, overall in those countries where FETO members are sheltered and they are not persecuted because they are considered as member of civil society or member of some philanthropic or religious organization. So I think moving forward in this public diplomacy approach is a right move. Besides strengthening the bilateral relations also within multilateral framework, for example, the agreement between Sweden has been of crucial importance in this regard, related to NATO membership, but when Turkey actually has lifted the veto, and one of the compromise was also related to the sheltering of Fethullah, the FETO organization members. So I think working on different levels within diplomatic tools is a suitable way. Also, trying to strengthening the connection in terms of intelligence and security services is also one of the most effective frameworks where to work in.
Ahmet, I want to ask you about the U.S.-Turkey relationship. That 2014-2016 period, especially, a very, very traumatic period. You had Obama making the partnership with the YPG, then you had the failed coup attempt, you had a very lackluster announcement coming from Washington, D.C. that really didn't satisfy the Turks. And we look at the relationship today. Has the U.S.-Turkey relationship overcome the tensions from the coup attempt and overcome the tensions of having the FETO terror organization's headquarters based in Pennsylvania?
Yusuf, as you mentioned, especially during the last decade, the U.S.-Turkey relations, I think, took a fluctuative route, especially regarding the U.S. support to PKK-PYD terrorist organization or FETO organization, then the Branson issue, S-400 issue, F-35 issue. So there are a lot of problems, which some of them already has been solved, which some of them already on the agenda. But to be honest, for example, regarding the members of FETO terrorist organization, most of their international members are still under the protection of US or EU governments. For example, in the Western countries, they found as safe havens in those countries, and usually they are welcomed as the leaders or key persons of a religious group or a Jamaat, so-called. So that's why the approach of the Western countries to the FETO organization and the approach of Turkey is totally different from each other. I think even if all the diplomatic efforts regarding this issue were in reality worked, we couldn't have the concrete results yet regarding to that one, especially their financial resources. For example, in US, they still have a lot of schools which they make a lot of money. For example, these make financial resources. Also, they have a good network which usually work against Turkey's policy issues, especially in the international foreign affairs, for example. So these issues still expect or wait solution. But when we look at the last period, there is a positive trend, especially between the Turkish-US relations and Turkish-EU relations, especially after the NATO's decision to increase the defense expenses, etc. And when they need a real military power in the region, and when they are aware of the Turkey's role or possible role or power, which can be take part in the European security again. So these issues may help in the future.
Valeria, so Ahmet's saying that the relationship with the U.S. has recovered and that the relationship with Europe right now is heading in a positive direction as well. Do you share his views? I mean, from a foreign policy perspective, has Turkey overcome the July 15th tensions in its bilateral relationships?
You know, we are living in a very fluid time where the relations are transactional relations. So also the hypocritical approach by European Union has changed, and it records as well, or it confirms again a sort of double standard towards Turkey in a way that they look at Turkey as a suitable partner and strategic partner, as Ahmet just said, in terms of defense and security, without really paying attention to the fight of Turkey against Fethullah Gulen, FETO organization members, and so on. So definitely, if we look from the European Union perspective, anything related to Turkey has become transactional, but also in this transactional approach, there is a sort of mismanagement, because to some extent they neglect that Turkey is still a candidate member to European Union, and within the candidacy process, the membership process, there is no advancement, there is no development. Mm-hmm. And they treat, to some extent, Turkey as it was a third state member, a third state country, with a specific treatment related to some specific issues, can be migration control, can be security, and can be rearming European Union. Mm-hmm. Definitely, this is a very crucial time for Turkey, because if we look at Turkey's stance in the region, it's been the one who is invested more and also who bear more fruits comparing to the European countries. So it's obvious that Europe is looking with favor about Turkey on security and military matters nowadays.
Valeria, Ahmet, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for helping me look back at one of the most important events in Turkey's modern history. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.